His name was Adrian Shaw. And on the night they sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison for crimes he didn't commit, his best friend, the man he had trusted with his life, sat in the courtroom wearing a $5,000 suit and smiled at him like it was the sweetest victory he'd ever tasted. That smile would haunt Adrian longer than the cold steel bars ever could. This is not a story about fairness. This is a story about what a man becomes when every single thing he loves is taken from him by the one person who was never supposed to be the enemy. Adrian and Julian Cross met at MIT in 2004. Two kids who didn't belong. Adrian was the quiet, brilliant son of a Bronx schoolteacher. Julian was the charismatic son of a disgraced hedge fund manager who drank himself to death. They became inseparable. In 2009 they founded Nexus Dynamics in a freezing garage in Queens. Adrian was the mind. He created Sentinel, an AI cybersecurity system so advanced that governments and Fortune 50 companies would eventually pay millions just to sleep better at night. Julian was the mouth. The closer. The man who could walk into any room and own it. For 12 years they were more than partners. They were brothers. Adrian got married to Elena Morales in 2013. Julian was his best man. When their son Noah was born in 2016, Julian became godfather. They even bought houses on the same street in Westchester. The four of them, Adrian, Elena, Julian, and Julian's then-wife Claire, felt like family. But something had begun to rot beneath the surface. It started small. Julian's appetite for the spotlight grew monstrous. Every interview, every award, every keynote, he positioned himself as the visionary behind Sentinel, while Adrian was painted as the lead engineer. The quiet genius in the basement. Julian began to believe his own lie. Then came the money. Julian started skimming. Small at first. Then larger. Then he crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. He began secretly selling early versions of Sentinel's predictive algorithms to a Russian oligarch with deep ties to the GRU. The tech was being used to hunt dissidents and penetrate Western infrastructure. Elena found out first. She confronted Julian in late 2018. Instead of panic, Julian saw opportunity. Elena had always been drawn to his confidence, his flash. Adrian had become consumed with his mother's stage 4 cancer. He was working 18-hour days and spending every remaining hour at the hospital in White Plains. He was exhausted. Distant. Broken. Julian became Elena's escape. The affair lasted 21 months. They didn't just betray Adrian. They began planning how to remove him completely. In the summer of 2020, Adrian finally noticed irregularities in the books. He started digging quietly. What he found made his blood run cold: wire transfers, encrypted communications, and a trail that led directly to Julian. Before Adrian could act, Julian and Elena struck first. On October 12, 2020, federal agents stormed Adrian's home at 4:17 a.m. They dragged him out in front of his 6-year-old son. The charges were devastating: industrial espionage, treason, money laundering, and leaking classified defense technology to foreign adversaries. The evidence was perfect. Because Julian had spent 14 months building it. But the worst was yet to come. While Adrian was fighting for his life in a maximum security facility in Colorado, his mother's pain medication was switched with saline. She died in agony, alone, begging for her son. The hospice later said it was a terrible mistake. Adrian knew better. Elena filed for divorce and full custody while Adrian was locked away. 6 months later she married Julian in the same cathedral where she had married Adrian 11 years earlier. They told Noah that his real father was a traitor who never loved him. Julian rebranded the company. Sentinel became Cross Sentinel. The valuation exploded to $2.3 billion after Julian signed massive new defense contracts using the very technology he had sold to America's enemies. Every night in his cell, Adrian would close his eyes and see that smile from the courtroom. That goddamn smile. He stopped speaking for 11 months. The psychologists called it severe trauma-induced mutism. The inmates called him Ghost. But Ghost was listening. Ghost was watching. Ghost was learning. The turning point. In the winter of 2023, something inside Adrian finally broke open. Not into madness. Into clarity. A former NSA analyst serving time for leaking documents became his unlikely mentor. The man recognized Adrian's mind immediately. Over 2 years, he taught him things they don't teach at MIT. How real intelligence networks operate. How to build shadow financial structures. How to disappear while still being physically present. Adrian also met Mouse, a savant-level hacker doing time for destroying 3 major banks. Mouse taught him how to think like the machines. How to build something that even Sentinel couldn't defend against. Adrian didn't scream for revenge. He didn't cry. He planned. He realized the system would never give him justice. Julian had bought judges, senators, and media personalities. The only way to win was to become something the old Adrian could never have been. In March 2025, after serving 4 years and 7 months, Adrian Shaw was quietly released when a federal judge was presented with newly discovered, exculpatory evidence. The judge never knew that evidence had been manufactured by Mouse from inside prison using a smuggled Raspberry Pi and sheer brilliance. Adrian walked out of prison with nothing but a duffel bag and a dead man's eyes. The world believed he was finished. Julian's people even had a contingency plan in case he tried anything, a $400,000 hit already funded through a shell company in Montenegro. Adrian knew about the hit before the assassin did. He disappeared for 18 months. No social media. No public records. No mistakes. He lived in a windowless basement in Bucharest for 9 months, then moved to a fishing village in Portugal. Every single day he worked on something he called the Reckoning Protocol, a self-evolving counter-AI designed with one purpose, to eat Julian Cross alive from the inside out. He rebuilt his body. He rebuilt his mind. He rebuilt his soul into something colder and sharper than anything Julian could comprehend. And every single night, he opened an encrypted folder on his laptop that contained only 4 photographs. His mother smiling at him on her 60th birthday. Elena holding newborn Noah. The 3 of them, Adrian, Julian, and Noah, on a boat in the Hamptons. Julian's courtroom smile on the day Adrian was sentenced. Those 4 pictures were all the fuel he needed. When Adrian finally returned to America in October 2026, he was unrecognizable. Lean. Hard. Hair cut military short. A scar running through his left eyebrow that he'd earned in prison. He looked like a man who had walked through hell and taken notes. He still had one friend who had never betrayed him, his old college roommate, now a burned-out private investigator named Reyes. Reyes gave him the final pieces. Elena was miserable. Julian had grown cruel. He cheated on her openly. He had begun hitting her when he drank. Their marriage had become a business arrangement. Noah, now 10 years old, had become quiet and anxious, sensing the rot in the house even if he didn't understand it. Julian was preparing for the biggest moment of his life, the Nexus IPO. A $14 billion public offering. He was scheduled to ring the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange in 11 days and receive the Visionary of the Decade award at the annual TechForge Summit the night before. Adrian smiled for the first time in 6 years when he heard that. Perfect. The TechForge Summit was held at the Lincoln Center on a cold November night in 2026. Over 3,000 people. Every major journalist. Live streamed to 47 countries. Julian Cross walked on stage at 8:47 p.m. to a standing ovation. He looked like a king. Bespoke Tom Ford suit. Perfect tan. Teeth whitened for the occasion. Elena sat in the front row wearing diamonds that had once belonged to Adrian's mother. Julian began his speech about trust, innovation, and the sacred duty of technology. At 8:53 p.m., every screen in the auditorium went black. Then a single line appeared in cold white text. "Hello, brother." The entire audience froze. Adrian's voice, calm, deep, and terrifyingly composed, came through every speaker in the building. "You stole my company. You stole my wife. You stole my son. You murdered my mother. And you smiled while you did it." Security began running toward the control booth. They were too late. The screens exploded with documents, bank transfers, recorded phone calls, and videos. Everything. Julian's deals with the Russians. The payments to the hospice to kill Adrian's mother. The $2.4 million wired to the judge who sentenced Adrian. The brutal messages Julian had sent to Elena threatening her if she ever left him. The audience watched in stunned silence as Julian's entire empire was vivisected in real time. But Adrian wasn't done. He walked down the center aisle wearing a simple black suit. No mask. No disguise. The ghost had come home. Julian's face had gone the color of old paper. He tried to speak, but the microphone was dead. Adrian stepped onto the stage and looked his former brother in the eyes for the first time in 6 years. "You always wanted the credit, Julian. Tonight you're getting all of it." At that exact moment, every bank account connected to Julian Cross was drained. Not stolen, transferred to the families of Russian dissidents, to cancer research foundations, and to a trust fund for Noah that Julian could never touch. The SEC received an automated 4,700-page report. The FBI received video evidence of Julian ordering the hit on Adrian that had failed in prison. Julian lunged at him. Adrian didn't flinch. He simply said, "You're already dead. You just don't know it yet." 2 FBI agents walked onto the stage and arrested Julian Cross in front of the entire technology industry. The man who had once been on the cover of Forbes was dragged away screaming that it was all lies, that Adrian was the criminal, that this was impossible. As they cuffed him, Adrian leaned in close and whispered the last words Julian would hear as a free man. "Smile, brother. This is the best part." Elena stood crying in the front row, mascara running down her face. When she looked at Adrian, she saw a stranger. The gentle man she had married was gone. In his place stood someone who had gone to a place she could never reach and had chosen not to come all the way back. Noah stared at his father with wide, confused eyes. Adrian looked at his son and gave him the smallest nod. A promise. Later. Julian Cross was sentenced to 42 years in federal prison. The IPO collapsed. Nexus Dynamics was dismantled. His name became a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms across Silicon Valley. Adrian Shaw never took the company back. He didn't want it. Instead he created something smaller, quieter, and more powerful, a foundation that protects whistleblowers and funds ethical AI development. He got his son back. Slowly. Painfully. One day at a time. Some nights he still sits on his porch in Vermont watching the trees sway. He thinks about karma, about justice, about the difference between the two. He doesn't believe in cosmic balance anymore. He believes men create their own karma. And sometimes, the man who was buried alive is the one who comes back carrying the shovel he was supposed to be buried with. Adrian Shaw doesn't smile much these days. But when he does, it's the kind of smile that makes powerful men check their locks twice. Because some betrayals don't just break a man. They forge him into something the betrayer will never survive. And the terrifying part? The story isn't over. It's only beginning.